Well, hello, beautiful people. How you doing? Today we are getting right into it. Today we are getting into chapter 2, and this is going to be part 1, where we've left Napoleon Hill. He is basically starting to discover his other self and really tapping into this channeling that I've been talking about. And if you guys haven't had a chance, go research Esther Hicks, Abraham Hicks, her channeling and how she does that and how she's just guided by her other self. And so this is essentially Napoleon Hill experiencing that same thing way back in the 1930s at his lowest point. So this is through all the meditation and just kind of, trusting in the process, believing. Again, this is not just something that can happen overnight. It's something that is over a period of time and accumulation. And so he's definitely starting to reap the rewards from that. And then eventually this chapter will get into the actual voice of the devil, which I'm so excited for you guys to hear. It won't be in this video, but it will be in the next video. But again, let's just keep listening. I'm going to be posting these every day, Monday through Friday. So you guys will get to it. And I'm just so excited to get you guys along for this ride. So let's go ahead and get started here. Let me just go ahead and cue up the audio, and then we can start up here.
Chapter 2. A new world is revealed to me. Obviously, I had undergone a new birth by which I had been separated from all forms of fear. I now had courage such as I never before had experienced. Despite the fact that I had not as yet been shown how, or from what source, I would be able to secure the necessary funds which I was seeking, I had such absolute faith that the money would be forthcoming that I could see it already in my possession. On but few occasions in my entire life have I experienced such faith. It was a feeling which one person cannot describe to another. There are no words in the English language suitable for such a description, a fact that all who have had similar experiences can easily verify. I proceeded immediately to carry out the instructions I had received. All feeling that I had embarked upon an impossible mission had now left me. One by one, I began to call into my mind the names of all my acquaintances I knew to be financially able to supply me with the $25,000 which I needed, starting with the name of Henry Ford and going over the entire list of more than 300 people. My other self plainly said, "Keep on searching." The darkest hour is just before dawn. But I had come to the end of my rope. My entire list of acquaintances had been exhausted, and with it, my physical endurance as well. I had been at work, concentrating my mind upon that list of names for the better part of 2 days and nights, having stopped only long enough to sleep for a few hours. I leaned back in my chair, shut my eyes, and went into a sort of doze for a few minutes. I was aroused by what seemed to be an explosion in the room. As I regained consciousness, the name of Albert L. Pelton came into my mind, and with it, a plan which I knew instantly to be the plan through which I would succeed in getting Mr. Pelton to publish my books. I remembered Mr. Pelton only as an advertiser in the Golden Rule magazine, which I had formerly published.
Hill's subconscious mind identified an acquaintance, remembered only as an advertiser in Hill's magazine, as a potential source of funding. You make an impression on everyone you meet, just as everyone you meet makes an impression on you. You never know when an acquaintance may become a business associate. There is great power in your network.
I sent for a typewriter, addressed a letter to Mr. Pelton at Meriden, Connecticut, and described the plan just as it had been handed over to me. He answered by telegram, saying that he would be in Philadelphia to see me the following day. When he came, I showed him the original manuscripts of my philosophy and briefly explained what I believed its mission to be. He turned through the pages of the manuscripts for a few minutes, then stopped suddenly and fixed his eyes on the wall for a few seconds and said, "I will publish your books for you." The contract was drawn. A substantial advance payment on royalties was given me. The manuscripts were turned over to him, and he took them back to Meriden. I did not ask him at the time what caused him to reach a decision to publish my books before he had read the manuscripts, but I do know that he supplied the necessary capital, printed the books, and assisted me in selling many thousands of sets of them to his own clientele of book buyers who were located in practically every English-speaking country in the world. My other self makes good. 3 months from the day that Mr. Pelton called on me in Philadelphia, a completed set of my books was placed on the table in front of me, and my income from the sale of the books began to run high enough for all my needs. These books are now in the hands of my students all over the world. My first royalty check from the sale of my books was for $850. As I opened the envelope in which it came, my other self said, "Your only limitation is the one which you set up in your own mind."
Your only limitation is the one which you set up in your own mind. Does this statement ring as true for you as it does for me? So many times I have been my own worst enemy and needlessly held myself back through a lack of self-confidence. Hill wants us all to discover our other self so we can each reach our maximum potential.
I'm not sure that I understand just what this other self is, but I do know that there can be no permanent defeat for the man or the woman who discovers it and relies upon it. The day after Mr. Pelton came to see me in Philadelphia, my other self presented me with an idea which solved my immediate financial problem. The idea flashed into my mind that automobile merchandising methods had to undergo a drastic change, and that future salesmen in this field would have to learn to sell automobiles instead of merely serving as buyers of used car trade-ins, as most of them were doing at the time. It also occurred to me that young men who had just finished college and who, therefore, knew nothing of the old tricks of automobile merchandising would be the material out of which this new brand of salesman could best be developed. The idea was so distinct and impressive that I immediately called the sales manager of the General Motors Company on long-distance telephone and briefly explained my plan to him. He too was impressed by it and referred me to the West Philadelphia branch of the Buick Automobile Company, which was then owned and managed by Earl Powell. I went to see Mr. Powell, explained my plan to him, and he retained me at once to train 15 carefully selected young college men through whom the plan was put into operation. My income from that retainer was more than enough to take care of all of my expenses for the following 3 months until the returns from the sale of my books began to come in, including the cost of that expensive suite of rooms over which I had at first been so concerned. My other self had not disappointed me. The money I needed was in my hands at the proper time, just as I had been assured the money would be. By this time, I had been convinced that my trip to Philadelphia was by no means a fool's mission, as my reason had indicated it would be before I left West Virginia. From that time right up to this very minute, everything I have needed has come to me, and this despite the fact that the whole world has recently passed through a period of economic depression, when the bare necessities of life have not always been available to all people. Sometimes the arrival of the material things I needed has been a little late, but I can truthfully say that my other self has always met me at the crossroads when I have come to them and indicated which path I should follow. The other self follows no precedents, recognizes no limitations, and always finds a way to accomplish desired ends. It may meet with temporary defeat, but not with permanent failure. I am as sure of the soundness of this statement as I am of the fact of being engaged in writing these lines.
Wow.
The other self may meet with temporary defeat, but not with permanent failure. How many times do we allow a temporary defeat to affect us as if it were a permanent failure, instead of learning from it and moving on? As Hill describes, he himself faced many setbacks along his journey, but each time he was able to find the seed of greater benefit and move on to greater successes.
Meanwhile, I earnestly hope that some of the millions of men and women who have been wounded by the business depression and other unpleasant experiences will discover within themselves this strange entity which I have called my other self, and that the discovery will lead them, as it has led me, into a closer relationship with that source of power which surmounts obstacles and masters difficulties instead of being mastered by them. There is a great power to be discovered in your other self. Search sincerely, and you will find it.
Hill's work was published during the Great Depression and indeed helped millions of people find hope and courage to live in faith that they would find their own paths to success. I believe we can find many parallels between his time and our own. It is during periods of great stress that we find our will and our inner strength. With the current economic uncertainties, people are choosing or being forced to find new paths to provide for themselves and their families. and many will find great success. They will be the great stories of success we will be reading about in a few years from now. Will you be among those success stories or still watching from the sidelines?
Failure, a blessing in disguise. I have made another discovery as the result of this introduction to my other self, namely, that there is a solution for every legitimate problem, no matter how difficult the problem may seem.
There is a solution for every legitimate problem, no matter how difficult the problem may seem. While this concept may be difficult to acknowledge when you're in the midst of the storm, hindsight generally proves it true.
I have also discovered that there comes with every experience of temporary defeat and every failure and every form of adversity the seed of an equivalent benefit. Mind you, I did not say the full-blown flower of success, but the seed from which that flower may be made to germinate and grow. I know of no exception to this rule. The seed of which I speak may not always be observed, but you may be sure it is there in one form or another. I do not pretend to understand all about this strange force which reduced me to poverty and want, and filled me with fear, and then gave me a new birth of faith, through which I have been privileged to extend help to tens of thousands who found themselves slipping. But I do know that such a force has come into my life, and that I am doing all I can to place others in communication with it. During my quarter century of research into the causes of success and failure, I have discovered many principles of truth which have been helpful to me and to others, but nothing I have observed has impressed me more than the discovery that every great leader of the past, whose record I have examined, was beset by difficulties and met with temporary defeat before arriving.
Every great leader of the past, whose record I have examined, was beset by difficulties and met with temporary defeat before arriving. Failure and temporary defeat are part of the journey to finding true success.
From Christ on down to Edison, the men who have achieved most have been those who have met with the most stubborn forms of temporary defeat. This would seem to justify the conclusion that infinite intelligence has a plan or a law by which it hurdles men over many obstacles before giving them the privilege of leadership or the opportunity to render useful service in a noteworthy fashion. I would not wish to be again subjected to the experiences through which I passed during that fateful Christmas Eve in 1923, and since on that eventful evening when I walked around the schoolhouse in West Virginia and fought that terrible battle with fear, but all the wealth in the world would not induce me to divest myself of the knowledge I have gained from those experiences. Faith.
All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and leave it at that there. Let me just go ahead and go back here. Yeah, so this is just going to be the first part of that video. And then tomorrow we're going to have the other video jump right into it, continue off to where we left off. I got to say, man, just listening to this now for the third time, I'm listening to it with new eyes. I think I mentioned this before in some of my other videos, that you really want to treat these books like workbooks, because the more you really start to dive into these books, the more the book just changes. Like, I don't even remember a lot of this interaction that he was having just with his inner self, and then just talking about his inner self the last time I read it. And it just really goes to show the process, right? And so it's kind of like, you know, when you're going through something, and I know I can personally attest to this, and I've experienced this, and I'm sure a lot of you have too. You guys can all comment down below, but we all have felt some type of temporary defeat. And it feels like, you know, sometimes that when it's a really big defeat, that you know, those things that can deflate people, that's when you know that everything that you're looking for is right around the corner. So it's almost kind of like you want to expect defeat, temporary defeat, because it's almost like the universe is saying, hey, we want to make sure this is really what you want, and we're going to test you, you know, so that you don't end up becoming the victim of the circumstance, and you just keep pushing through no matter what. So I'll leave you guys with those words of wisdom. It's something that's going to definitely sit with me today, and as we get into these later chapters, you'll really start to understand this. And like I said, I'm really excited for you guys to continue to hear this audio, and I hope you guys are really enjoying it. Like and comment below, subscribe so that you don't miss any of the video contents that I'm posting, because like I said, I will be posting Monday through Friday. And then I am still working on the coaching, so I want to get that going. Building this team and group has been a bit of a challenge, but I'm glad you guys are along for the ride with me, and I really appreciate your patience, so that I can continue to get out more content. And a lot of you guys have been asking how to contact me. All of my social media links are down below, especially my IG. I will respond to those if you guys have personal questions or if you are interested in looking into coaching, and I want to get that coaching list up to you guys as soon as possible. So I hope you guys make it a great day, and until next time, take care.